I've created an environment, but I will be showing us how to create it. So what you just need to do is to come to DevOps Starter and click on it. Okay, so this is the one I have created previously. So just click on create. Okay, so when you click on create, you just wait while it loads. Okay, so you can see from the services that he has displayed, we have different language you can actually build. We have .NET, Node.js, and PHP. We have different other languages. So let's assume I'm building with building this code. Maybe I have a code that I'm going to build with .NET. Okay, so what I need to do is just to select this language. Microsoft provides us this sample application in DevOps Starter environment. So you can also come here and just click on, for example, by default, this is set to GitHub environment. So since I'm using a DevOps environment to build and deploy my code, so I will just click here to change it to DevOps, okay? So when you do that, just click on done. So the next thing you need to do, you have selected .NET, so just click on next. Okay, so when you click on next, so you still have, first, if you have your application that will be communicating or interacting with a database, so what you need to do is just to enable this database and click on next. But for the purpose of this demo session, I will just disable this. Okay, I'm just showing us the workflow. So what I need to do now is just to click on next. Okay, so this place is asking me basically that which services or which server am I going to use to host my application. So you can see I have different servers here. We have a web app application, we have functional, we have virtual machine. So Suleiman basically taught about every one of them and what they can do. So I will be going with the web app service, because with web app service, I will not be doing much of the underlying management of the infrastructure. So I will just click next to create the service. So here, I'm going to give the name of my project. Okay, so this is the name of my organization, which is in DevOps. This is my subscription, and this is my web app name. Okay. So I will just give, and this is the location. For example, if I want to add additional setting, I will just click here. Okay, so it's also going to create a resource group, okay, for this web app service. And the price tier also is going to, you can select different price tier you want to use. Okay, so I'm also the application insight that is going to monitor what is going on your application, if there's any issue. This application insight will be able to actually look at that. So the location for this application insight, you need to select it. So I have actually created and set up this environment, so there's no need for me to create this again. So I'll just go back to my previous setup I've done. So I'll look at what I've already set up this environment. Okay, so I'll just click on it, the one I have, so that you can see the way it's going to look at if you create it. So it's going to, by the time you create that workflow, so you are going to get this dashboard. So with this dashboard, you can see that we have the code, okay, on the master. So we have the build. Okay, so we have the dev environment. So we have the release also. So this is also the web app application area. So with this, the application endpoints. For example, you have already deployed the code to your web application. You can just come here and browse to see what you have already deployed. Okay, so this is the web application, and you can see the application is running. So if you also need to, this is the application inside I just talked about. So for example, if there are requests to your database, to your application, if there's any fail request or there are any, you can see with this application inside, you can actually see what's going on. You can see how many users that is requesting to your application, that have made requests to your application. And you can also see how many fail requests to your application. Okay, so what from here I can just navigate to my Azure DevOps, which is the environment using to build the application. So I'll click on my code. Here it's going to navigate me to my DevOps environment. So this is actually the code. Okay, so you can see that in the repo environment, this is where your project, which is your code, is going to reside. So you can come here, you can update your code, you can do whatever changes you need to do on this code in this environment. Okay, so we also have the commits. So by the time you have modify or update your code, so you are going to see that under a commit. Okay, so it's going to also, you can see these are the previous one I have done. So it's going to show who made the commit, who made different changes. It's just like an audit train. So whatever that happened on the code, when you come to commit, you are going to see which who made that changes. So we also have branches. So we have different branches. We have, as you can see, these are on master branch. So you can create a feature branch. For example, there is an update or if a new feature from customer, okay, that developer will need to work on. So they will be also, because that update or new feature don't need to be part of the master branch, because anything that is on the master branch need to be pushed to the production. So there need to be a different branch that everyone can be working on. So when it's okay to go to the master branch, you can now merge the feature branch to the master branch so that we cannot deploy that to the production environment. So we also have a pull request. So if any developer can make a pull request to a user or someone that is responsible to approve a pull request. So with pull request, you can actually see what that have been requested for approval. So this will actually display that. So this is the pipeline, which is the CI, the continuous integration environment. So in this environment, you can actually use this place to build your code. Okay, so you use this to build the code. So when you build the code, it's going to show, you can see that these are the code I've already built. Okay, it's going to show if the code was successful or if there's an error message, it's going to display here. So in this environment, in the pipeline environment, so if you want, for example, if I have any code to build now, just click on new pipeline. Okay, so it's going to ask me where is my code. So if I have my code, just the way I have my code on the Azure repo, so I'll just tick Azure repo. But if I have my code in a Bitbucket cloud, you can also pull your code from Bitbucket. You can pick it from GitHub, different environments. Okay, I just support different other environment where you have your code. So from there, you can, after you have picked your code, for example, if I'm picking this now, so you can see it's going to tell me, okay, for this is a Docker file, okay, Docker image. So you can see it's asking me, okay, am I going to build the image? Am I going to build a Docker image with this service or with this tool? It just is what I can only just do is just to build the image and it will remain in my DevOps environment. But we have the second one, build and pull the image to Azure container. With this one, okay, when I build and pull the image to Azure container, so it's going to go to the container where anybody can pull the image. But Azure Container Registry is a private registry. So you can only give access to user to have access to this Azure container. It's not like other container registry that is open source where everybody can just go and put the image from. So we have the third one, which is deploy to Azure Kubernetes Service. This is a service where you can push the image to Azure container and also deploy to Kubernetes Service, which is the cluster. So when you deploy to the cluster environment, so in that environment, your user will now have access to your application. So this environment exposes the application that you have already built using your container, your image that you have already built using this environment. So in this environment, deploying to Kubernetes service is going to expose the application, okay, to your end users. So let me just come back. So we also have Agile board. Agile board is we have already talked about it. Let me just, this is using to plan your, it's actually used by a team to plan a project, to assign tasks. Okay, so we have backlog where you can actually view and review the backlog from team members. So this is just for the Agile DevOps environment. So I will be going back to my web app service. So this is my web apps environment, which Agile DevOps starter have already provisioned for me. So in this environment, so we have different services or tools. Also, we have deployment slots. In the deployment slots, for example, you have an application that you have already deployed, and you don't want that application to go straight to the production environment. So you can just set up a deployment slot where we can test this before swapping to the production environment. So that is how the deployment slot environment actually works. So these application inside where you can get is the backups. You want to back up your application, and these are also custom domain environment where, for example, you don't need the default domain that Microsoft have given you. You want to customize your own custom domain, so you can be able to do that and add your custom domain in this environment. So, for example, if you have already deployed your application, you can just come here, just like the one I've already built and deployed. So for me to view it, I'll just browse on the endpoints. So when you browse on the endpoints, it's going to bring me to where what I've already deployed. So you can just, this is the application I've deployed before this session, just to save time. Okay, so I can click here and go inside the application. Okay, so I can do a lot of things. Okay, for example, if there's any feedback or there's any feature that the client or the customer wants, so I can go back to my code environment and just come here. So let's say there is I need to update any code in this environment. Okay, so I'll just come here and update the code. Okay. So I will just go to my index. Yeah. So I can just come here. Let's see. Let me just try and update and see how the Agile DevOps project has been set up. Okay, let me just add something. Okay, I can just click on edit here. Agile DevOps has finally deployed. Okay, I'll just commit this. So when I go to my pipeline, it's going to trigger a build. You can see we have started. So just want you to see how the workflow runs. So we have started a build. It's already in queue state. Okay, so this is how it's going to build it. So you can see that is checking out the ASP.NET. Checking out, so okay, so it's also restoring. Okay. So while we wait for this, let me just go over to our DevOps and Agile environment. So just like my colleagues was talking about the build process. So by the time you finish the build process, so when you refresh this environment, you are going to see a new build. Okay. So when we refresh this environment, you are going to see a new build with a new update that a new build has been built. So let's just go back to see, okay, still restoring the build process. So it's going to take some time. Going to take the time. So when this is already finished restoring, building, and it's also going to test. So during the process of testing, if there's any error message or any issue with this code, we are going to have a failure during the building process and testing. Okay, so after if we have a failure in the testing process, it's not going to publish any of these application into the environment that we have created, like the web application. So the restore have succeeded, so it's building now. So after the build process, it's going to come to the testing. So it's just stage by stage. Okay, it also depends on what you have defined. Okay, so you can define a few tasks, okay, to run. So it depends on what you have already defined on your code. So it's testing, and you can see that it's already running the test. So let's assume if this code is wrong now, we are going to have a failure here. So in this, when we have any issue here, so if you check it, look at the error message, you can as well troubleshoot, and also just try to collaborate with the developer and let them know that this code, there's something wrong with it. So they will go back to their development environment and just try to fix the issue. So you can see the testing was successful, the publish was successful. Also copy the wrong setting file was successful also. So you can see that the published artifact is also successful. So this is what we call the CI, which is continuous integration. This is just the continuous integration that a lot of us is hearing about. So let's go to the CD. Okay, let's see if the release have started. So you can see that the release is about to start. It just started now. So this environment is going to run the release to the web app that we have created in the Azure. Okay, so it's already in progress. So, okay, so we have started now. So this is running the agent. After you have run the agent, so it's also going to run different dependency or all the makeup of the application to ensure that the application is okay before it runs the final deployment to our production environment. So let's go back to our Azure portal environment. I just do a refresh. Let's see if we have any updates yet. Okay, so you can see that build succeeded just now. So meaning our build, we just finished our build. You can see that our release is in progress. Okay, so with this Azure environment, so it's a dashboard for you. Here you can actually monitor all your deployment, your build process, your release process, even your infrastructure. You can also monitor everything, and you can monitor your application insights. Okay, what is going on in your application? So with Azure DevOps Starter, you don't need to bother about the hour of setting up your infrastructure, your DevOps environment. With these tools, you can just kickstart your setup. So it's very, very easy and simple deployment. So you automate the whole process for you. So we are still waiting for the release. The release is still ongoing. So while we also wait for that, I would like us to go back to our app service. Okay. Okay, so in the app service, we also have what we call deployment center. So in this deployment center, you can see all the functions. You can see that the build Okay, is tagging Azure pipeline. This is the account, that is the project, okay, that is connected to my DevOps environment. This is my repository, okay. This is the source, which is Azure repo. This is where my code is, my project. And this is the project, the project name, and this is the branch, which is the master. Okay, so whatever that is going on in the DevOps environment, so you can come here, okay, and see what is going on. You can see deploy successful to production. Let's go back to, okay, still, so that was the initial one. We have the build process. Say source version, build, release. Okay, the build process, you can see that they have already notified us that the build process was successful, but we are just waiting for the release process to come on board. Okay, so this, for the deployment center, you can actually come here. This environment is connected to your Azure DevOps environment. So always remember that the two environments are not the same. So for this environment to be connected to each other, for them to interact or communicate to each other, there's what we call connection service. So you need to create that connection service between them. So how to do that? You just come to your project setting and go to service connection. So you can see that this is the service connection. This is what is connecting me now between this environment to my Azure environment. So you need to create this environment. Without this environment, you cannot see the resources that is in this environment. You cannot see it in this environment because they are different environments. Okay, so you need to create this the connection services for them to be able to connect and interact with each other. So how to do that is very easy. Just as I said earlier, just go to your service connection, go to new service connection. Okay, you can just pick Azure Resource Manager and come down and go next. Okay, so leave it at a service principal. Is going to automatically discover your subscription because you need the subscription to actually work. Okay, so you can see it's loading a subscription. So you need to create this environment. Without this environment, you cannot communicate with Azure environment. You cannot see all the resources, okay, you have created in the Azure environment. So you can see that my subscription, you have already discovered my subscription. Okay, so you just the resource group, which is in my Azure environment. You can see I have different resource group. You can pick anyone here. Also give the name of the service connection name. After you have done that, you just click on save. So you're going to have a connection between your DevOps environment and the Azure cloud environment. So let me just quickly navigate back to my build environment, release environment. Let's see if the release have already released. Yeah, you can see it. The release have already finished. It was successful. Okay, so it was successful release to the cloud environment. So I have to go back to my web app to see the feedback that was updated if it actually replicates in my code. So in doing that, I will just go to browse. Okay, and see. Okay, so you can see just Sylvester. This is my name I just added. This is my name I just added to the application. So it's just reflected in the application. So this is just the workflow of setting up and deploying application to web app service. So at this junction, I would like to take some questions before we go, before we start the Kubernetes aspect of the demo. Hello, Mr. Ayomide. I don't know. I would like to get some questions. If there are any questions, let me know so that we can just can take the questions before going next to the Kubernetes aspect of the demo.
Okay, so if there are any, we could just roll. The mics are already open for attendees, so you can unmute your mic if you have any direct question, just to help. And then if there is not, we can just move to Kubernetes now.
Okay, so for Kubernetes, just like my colleague Suleiman earlier explained, Kubernetes is just a service that is managed by Microsoft. Okay, so it's used to deploy your container into the environment. Maybe your application that run on the container. Okay, so Kubernetes, you can build that container image using Agile DevOps, which is Agile pipeline, and deploy that into container registry first. From container registry, your Kubernetes service, which is your cluster, can just pull the image and just expose it over the internet to your end users. So if for setting up of Kubernetes, so the first thing you need to do, you also still need to go to Agile, portal.agile.com. So I already have the environment set up also just to save time. So these are my environment for Kubernetes registry, load balancing, and container registry. So if you want to set up this, is just easy. So what you need to do, the first thing you need to do is to click on create a resource. After that, you just come to your container, click on containers, and you click on Kubernetes service. Okay. So you just wait, it's going to run through, and this is just the process of creating the Kubernetes. So what you need to do here is to provide the resource group name and the name of the Kubernetes, also the region you want the Kubernetes to reside, and these are the version. Okay, so after that, we also need to leave it, need our Kubernetes, our Kubernetes node to scale. Maybe there's traffic and from users. Okay, if you have 3 or 5 Kubernetes which cannot cater for those traffic, it's going to auto scale on a different instance or an instance of a node to accommodate those traffic. So it's always advisable to enable auto scaling instead of the manual scale. Okay. So what you do after you have done that, just go to the next page. So after the next page, so it's going to display some of the information you have provided in your configuration. So let's say you can see that it's 1 to 5 nodes count I have previously, and you also just display that for me. So next thing you need to do is just leave all this as a default and go next. And the access level, role-based access control should be enabled, because this role-based access control is actually help you to manage access to your Kubernetes cluster. So it has to do with those you have given access. Those are the people that can actually have access to the Kubernetes environment. So we just enable this and click on next. Okay. So you click on next. So you can as well click on go to the network configuration. You can either use kubenet or adjust CIN. So for kubenet is default by Microsoft, so you don't need to actually do a lot of configuration. Okay, network configuration when setting up the Kubernetes service. For example, there are some big organizations that want to have their own networking, okay, in the Kubernetes environment. So that is the only way you can choose this, where you have your networking team to configure your virtual network and other network. So after that, you can just go back to, go to the next, which is the integration process. So in this place, this is where you create the container registry. Okay, so no, I talked about container registry earlier on, where your image, your build image is going to deploy. So from this environment, that is where your cluster is going to pull the image. Okay, so you need to create it so that they can, this container registry can have a communication with your cluster environment. If there is no communication, your cluster cannot pull the image from the container registry. So you creating this, you just need to click on create new and fill in the necessary information, the name, the resource group you want it to be, and the region. And also, and last but not least, just the admin user. You need to enable this. If you don't enable the admin user, this cluster cannot talk to the Kubernetes registry. Okay, so if it's disabled, you cannot talk to it. You need to enable the admin user so they can have you can have access, okay, to both container registry and cluster environment. So okay, just click on OK, and the next thing you can do, okay, next thing you can do is just to click on next, and next, and you can now create. Okay, so since I have the environments, I may just open my environment so that I can actually explain further on that. So this is the one I have created before. So this was my resource group. This is resource group. Okay, so this is the resource group I created, and I deployed the Kubernetes service and container registry into the resource group. So let's just go into my Kubernetes service. So when I click on my Kubernetes service, you can see my Kubernetes is running. It's up and running. One good thing about Kubernetes is if you have a Kubernetes service where you deploy your application to, under a second, you can start this Kubernetes and we just start immediately and just keep running. It's a bit faster than the virtual machine. Virtual machine, sometimes when you start it, keep loading, keep booting before it can start running. So Kubernetes is different. So immediately you just start, keep running. Okay, so and inside the Kubernetes, we have different functions and tools. So we have here you can configure your security, where you can give access to users to have access to your Kubernetes. We have activity logs. So whatever anyone does in this environment, when you go to your activity log, you can actually see the history of what has been done in this environment. So we also have the workload. Every of your deployment, this is where they are going to be pushed into. So you can see that the one I have deployed before this training, this my project is already here. Okay, so even when you go to a namespace, okay, so the namespace is when you create the Kubernetes service, this namespace information is going to come as default. These are system default projects. But anytime you deploy your application using DevOps environment, after you have built and deployed, it's going to come to your workload. Okay, so as this is the workload, and also this is the storage environment. This is the configuration environment. You need to see the configuration, different configuration. So you can also come here and see the configuration. This is the node pool. Okay, so I only have one running already. So I already have one node running. Okay, a node is just like a virtual machine. Okay, so But for virtual machine, we can actually log into virtual machine and install some application. But for this, you cannot log into it. The master is being managed by Microsoft. Okay, so most of these Kubernetes is being managed by Microsoft from the backend. So what is required of you is just to deploy your code into it, and that's all. Okay, so I'll go back to Agile DevOps now to explain how we can actually deploy into this environment. Okay, before going there, so I have explained the Kubernetes service and which also is the cluster. So let me just talk about the container registry. This is the container registry. Okay, so container registry is just what it does is just for after you have built your image, when you deploy it, the first point of contact is for container registry. It's going to be deployed in this environment, which is your repo. So you can use any, when it's already deployed here, you can use any of the web app, any of the services to pull it and display it on the environment, on the production environment. You can deploy it from here to any production environment. For example, now, if I want to deploy it to a web app for container, I don't want this application to run on that my Kubernetes cluster that I previously showed you. What I need to do is just to click on it here, okay, and click on this. I just click on it. You can see deploy to a web app. When you just click on deploy to a web app, it's going to bring an interface where I can feed the name, the resource group, and different information from my web app. Immediately, it's going to deploy and be running on my web app. If I want to use a single instance, okay, also I can just click here and it's going to deploy on a single instance and it'll be running there without going to create a resource, a resource and doing different configuration. So from here, if you have your image already pushed to the container registry, so you can just come here and just deploy directly to the server environment. Okay, so that is for the container registry. So let me go back to my Agile DevOps environment. I think here I have the application that was Dockerized, is already Dockerized, which I was showing you earlier. Okay. So this is my application that already have a Docker image. Okay, so I've already done all this from my local machine using the Visual Studio environment to actually Dockerize this application and I push it into this environment just to save our time of doing this during the demo time. So this is the how the application, when it's Dockerized, this is how it looks. You can see a Docker file is here. So this is the Docker file. So for example, I want this application as using Azure pipeline. So what I need to do just to click on pipeline and new pipeline. Okay, asking where's my code. I just click on Azure repo. I just pick my code, my project. So this is what I think I explained this earlier. So it's asking me, am I going to build the image, build and put the image to container registry just only, or I want to build and put the image to container registry and deploy to Kubernetes service. So depends on what I want to do. So for example, if I want to do this, I'll just click on this and build and deploy to Azure Kubernetes service. So at the same time, what this means is that when I build and push the image, it's going to go to container registry. From container registry, the Kubernetes service is going to pull the image and deploy it to the production environment. So I'll just select my Visual Studio subscription. So in this information is asking, this information is what I have in this environment. So that's why I said earlier on, for me to be able to see this information from this environment, I need to do a connection service. Okay, I need to create a connection service. Without that, I cannot see any information that's in this Azure environment. So it's asking me the name of my cluster. When I open here, now I'm going to see the name. Okay, so in the namespace, I'll just click here. I can create a new one. And the container registry name, which I've created in this environment portal, this is the name. So I'll just choose this. Okay, the image, this is the image of this is the image name of my project. The service port, this port is using this port to expose, okay, the application with the IP. So this port is going to be open, port 80. So it's going to open for the application to be accessed using this port. So when I'm done with this, what I need to do, for example, if I have selected this now, I just give a name. Okay, so I will just click on validate and configure. So it's going to present a YAML file where all the configuration on the code. Okay, these are all the configuration on the code, different stages. So it's going to trigger on master. Okay, so so we have different stages on this. It's using VA image name Ubuntu latest to test. This is staging, build stage. So there are different stages. Okay, that is actually that is going to use to build this application before the deployment stages. So if I need to build this application, and what I need to do is just to click save and run. So when I click save and run, you are going to watch the process of building and testing the container image, just like the first one I did for web app. It's still the same process. Okay, so after this process, so we are going to come back to our environment. Actually, see, it's going to come here. Just come here after you have done that. So what you need to do is just to click on the container registry and go to your repository, and you're going to see your image. So after you have seen your image, so go back to your Kubernetes Service, GC cluster. So you try to assess it to see if everything is working fine. How do you do that? So you can connect. You can click on connect using Azure Clash here. Also, you can just go to your load balancer. And default is load balancer for you. So this is the load balancer. You just click on load balancer. There's an IP, your content IP configuration. Okay, this is IP configuration that has given your application. See the okay, TCP port 80. So what you need to do here is just to come to a web browser, paste your IP address, and then using this port. Okay, so you can see that the application is live. It's already live. So if you also have any feedback, anything you need to do on this, so for customer, what you need to do is just to go back to your environment. Okay, so what you need to do is just to go back to your environment and okay, modify your code. Just go back to the environment and update or modify your code. So these are just the processes on how to set up Kubernetes and web app and run deployment and build process. So please, I would like to take questions if there are questions for me.
All right, thank you, Sylvester, for the demo. At least we were able to finish up in good time. Yep. There is a question from Taiwo.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're having bad network here, but let me go ahead. I want to confirm if one is to deploy to Kubernetes, is it that if you just have one application, is it advisable that you can still deploy to Kubernetes, or is this when you have several applications that you can deploy to Kubernetes, making use of doing the stuff of containerized application and then from there deploy to Kubernetes? Is it advisable that if you're having one application, you can deploy to Kubernetes, or it is when you have more than one that you can deploy to Kubernetes?
Okay, thank you for that question. So if you have any type of application, if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can deploy to Kubernetes environment. If you follow my colleagues in the previous presentation, when he talked about the advantage of Kubernetes, okay, Kubernetes, deploying to Kubernetes, that is your application you have. You are going to Dockerize it. It's like you are making use of your environment configuration. Are you getting it? So whatever all the dependencies that you have, okay, that you use in building that application, your environment, that is what that is going to be on that container that will be deployed to the Kubernetes environment. So it's not like when you deploy without Docker, you have other, for example, other dependencies different from what you already have set up in your environment. That it's just like this how you want this application to work. Okay, so that is why Kubernetes using container, okay, containerizing it and deploying it to Kubernetes environment is very important. You can use one, you can use two, you can use different applications. It's not restricted to any size of application. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any other question, please?
Yes, there is a question on the chat. Rotimi is asking, is it compulsory to Dockerize a repo before you use the Kubernetes?
Yes, it's very compulsory. You need to Dockerize your application. A repo is just where your application is going to reside. That is where you can start to build. So without you don't Dockerize, it's just like when I was trying to build. If you notice, this is my Dockerized environment. Okay, this is my application that is that is already Dockerized. If you notice, when I click on pipeline, okay, this is my application that is already on the repo. When I click on pipeline, when I go to new pipeline, when it asks me where is my code, and I say repo, okay, so when I choose my code, which is my project, it now populated a Docker. Okay, it's letting me know that that application has been Dockerized. So I need to build it using the Docker. So if I go back to the other, the other code I have, which is not Dockerized, okay, which is my ASP.NET, okay. Okay, so let's assume I want to build this again. So I go to my pipeline. You are going to see a different scenario here. So when I go to my new pipeline, when I go to where is my code, when I say Azure Repo, when I choose it, it's not going to bring, you can see, it's giving me ASP.NET. So it's letting me know my code, this is my code, this ASP.NET. So I'm going to choose any of these pipeline services to build it. So if it's not Dockerized, you cannot use a Docker to build it. Hello, I hope I answered the question correctly. I hope the question was well answered. I don't know if who asked that question.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
He's Rotimi is also asking if you can show him how to Dockerize with the Azure DevOps. He says he's okay with the answer already, but he's asking if it's possible for you to show him, how to Dockerize with the Azure DevOps.
Hello. So you can get you always use Azure DevOps to build your image. Azure DevOps is not an environment you can use to Dockerize. You can go to your IDE environment. That is where the developer Dockerize, use Docker file. Maybe you can use Visual Studio Code. You can use Visual Studio, okay, to actually Dockerize the application before pushing it to Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is just a CI and CD tool used to build and test your code before deployment. So I've already done that before this session, just to ensure that I not shove into our time, because I've already done all this in my development environment. Okay, so is Azure DevOps environment is for, yeah, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sylvester. Are there any other questions on the chat, or anyone who wants to be clarified on something before we close up? Okay, I think that there are none, so we just move. So thank you everyone for taking this short but very important and impactful training and webinar. We are happy to come to. We also stayed along to this point. Okay, so there's just one thing. Some attendees here did not register, but received a back-end link just to join due to the time, the time frame was short for them to properly register. So it would be nice for you to go to the chat now to copy the link and indicate in that survey link that with your email address that this is what you want, or you didn't register or something, such that we can properly account for you and send you the required material. So but if you do not register, like I said, you can just use the survey link and indicate that you didn't register while you are responding to the survey. That will help us to properly mark you in, yeah, for this event and the subsequent benefits that will follow. So after that, we'll also send you subsequent links just to ensure that you are properly incorporated into the program. So after that, then those who are selected would move up to the next stage. So please try to fill up the survey link and we'll be in touch with you. So for now, I would say thank you very much for being here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying to this time, and do have a very lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your time. And to the people who facilitated here, I'm so happy. I'm glad you did make it. It was also a short notice, but you did well and everything went fine. Thank you for facilitating. Thank you, Mr. Benga. Thank you for Suleiman. Thank you, Mr. Sylvester. Thank you, Mr. Ayo. Thank you for everything. Yeah, thank you, everyone. So have a lovely day. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.